It's now time for the Eld Henderson Real News Show, Organize, Don't Criticize, which airs each Wednesday evening from 6 o'clock p.m. until 7 o'clock p.m. here on WMPR. We now take you to Studio B for the Eld Henderson Real News Show, Organize, Don't Criticize with Dr. Henderson.
Hello, everybody. This is the Eld Henderson's Real News Show, Organize, Don't Criticize. I want to tell you, folks, I want you to buy my book by the same title, Organize, Don't Criticize, at Amazon.com. You need to learn how to pool your resources, build coalitions, and promote unity with self, family, and community. Your life will change in 30, 60, or 90 days, guaranteed. Organize, Don't Criticize, Amazon.com. That's the book of the century. Buy it today. Okay, folks, thank you for listening. We have viewers all over the world, and I'm here again. This is Eldridge Henderson from Bolton, Mississippi, with the real news. Organize, Don't Criticize. Folks, we're going to do something different today, something I haven't done in 40 years. And let's talking about one Africa, one nation, one military, one currency, regional languages, one nuclear system, and a nation that's going to be the center of the world again. We know this is new. People are afraid to talk about it, but we will be talking about it today. It's not going to happen anytime soon, probably 30 to 40 years. It all depends on international cooperation and partnerships that we can build. But I want you all to think about this and sort of pray about it so you can see that things can happen, because a lot of you all are alleged to be Christians and you believe in prayer. And as I look at the news and read the papers, I understand that many of our listeners throughout the world are not happy with the political and economic systems in their respective countries. And since we know that the people in Africa have the ability, the skill, and the will to organize as one nation eventually, after some intervention from specialists like we have today on this show. And when this happens, you will find that the nations of the world will start visiting Africa as a partner and not as a slave state. And when I say Africa, I'm talking about the 55 different independent nations that will form as one nation, the best nation and the strongest nation in the world. Now, I don't want you all to get excited and say, well, he's crazy. They've talked about this before. It never did happen. And many times, as an old historian, I find that many people said in 1770s that America will never become a United States. It is today, allegedly. They say there will be wars and continuous wars, rumors of wars. But I'm going to tell you today, we're going to give you a solution, because I have two, what I call education experts in here today. Two of them, some of the best men in Mississippi. I have Dr. William McHenry. He is the executive director of the Mississippi East Center. He is a distinguished leader in higher education, has made contributions in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, research, and graduate education. And I'm just telling you just a few things about him. He will talk additionally about some other things. And then I have another international specialist named Dr. Felix Okajie. This man is too dangerous. He has too much education. He should be the president of the United States. But he is a joint professor of urban higher education leadership and public health at Jackson State University. And the good thing that is different He has been a provost and vice president for academic affairs and student life, vice president for research and federal relations, and vice president for development. He knows everything you need to know about national and international education. So, gentlemen, I'm very pleased to have you here today. And I want you all to understand that you all are the experts. I am just one here to ask questions. And I'm going to start with the international expert, Dr. Okajie. Sir, I want you to tell us, just basically in your own words, a little about your early life, your family, your education, and some of the major successes you have had in education in Africa and America.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Henderson. It's a pleasure to be part of this interesting discourse this evening. I'm originally from Nigeria. I was born in a place called Benin City in Nigeria, which is the southern part of Nigeria. Had my early education in Nigeria, primary, secondary, and my baccalaureate degree in business administration, from Auchi Polytechnic in Nigeria. Subsequently, did my national youth service. In Nigeria, when you finish your baccalaureate degree, you have to serve the government for 1 year. And the idea was to take you from where you are familiar with and take you to another part of the country. So I was taken from the south to the northern part of Nigeria, where I spent 1 year working with the government of Kano, which is one of the largest cities in the north, and also worked with private businesses during that period. Finishing my youth service, I had the opportunity to come to the US for my master's degree. And I did my master's degree in social psychology and sociology at Atlanta University, which is now called Clark Atlanta University. During the time, it was just a graduate school. Finishing my master's and then started working on my doctorate degree at the same university, got my doctorate degree in educational leadership from Atlanta University, and I was immediately hired by my mentor, who was chair of the Department of Sociology at the time at Gerontology. Started working as a research associate with him, doing work in the area of gerontology and geriatrics, that is looking at issues particularly related to African Americans, within the age cohort of about 65 to, over 65 years. Fast forward, I came to Jackson to present a paper in the area of gerontology. And after my presentation, a lady came to me, Dr. Mary Benjamin. He was in the audience. Dr. Mary Benjamin was at that time the dean of liberal arts at Jackson State. He said, "Young man, I enjoyed, your presentation. Anytime you want a job, if you feel like, just give me a call. I think we can use you here at Jackson State." And that is how I came to Jackson State after taking a leave of absence to travel overseas around the world. Then when I came back, I called her, and she invited me to Jackson. In 1988, immediately hired me as assistant professor of sociology. And from there, I've been here since then, but I've had the opportunity to do other things.
Okay, that sounds good. Now, folks, you heard something, didn't you? You heard that he was a local Nigerian, great education, traveling, and then he was so good when he made a speech here in Jackson, Mississippi, he was almost forced to get a job here. Then he said, "Well, I know I have a job guaranteed, and I'm just throwing this in as a sidebar. I'm going to take a year off and travel throughout the world. And he came in I believe he said 88. And I'm looking at him right now. He's still here. Now, we also have another man of equal status. And I want you, Dr. McHenry, since I've been seeing you around here, since you are the upper crust, you upstairs on the high floor, sitting in a big suite with 4 or 5 assistants working with you. You are the executive director of the famous JSUE Center at 1230 Raymond Road. And I want you to sort of give us a summary of your life, your early education. And then we're going to get back to Dr. Okajie, and he's going to talk about his major education transformation that kept him in a position of responsibility and gave him the opportunity to get promoted, I noticed, 4 or 5 times since he's been here. And I heard rumors that he is so good, he's probably going to have to retire after he turns 90. So, Dr. McHenry, tell us about yourself. Our viewers and listeners need to know who you are and what you have contributed to education in America.
Well, it's appropriate that we're together because it's a small world. Mary Benjamin and I had just finished a project together. She's at the University of Arkansas, Pine Bluff. But I'm from Arkansas, and I started my career experiencing segregation and going through the Freedom of Choice integration plan, and I've finished as the only African American in my senior class in high school. I moved from there and obtained a bachelor's degree in mathematics and chemistry at Southern Arkansas University, where I now serve on the board of governors. And actually, we meet tomorrow. I left Southern Arkansas University and enrolled in Mississippi State University and completed a doctorate degree in organic chemistry. When I finished working there, I had a good experience with Dr. McComas, who was president of Mississippi State. He came down and he said, "You finishing your doctorate?" And he said, "Yes." And he started telling me that maybe it would be wise if we had at least one African American in the College of Arts and Sciences at Mississippi State. And so he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And I stayed at Mississippi State, where I served as program director for the Patricia Robert Harris program, designed to bring persons of color and women into the professorate. So my thoughts were immediately that we needed to expand the diversity on university campuses throughout the country. So I had the largest grant from the Department of Education to help bring about that. I partnered with David Matthews, who was Secretary of the Department of Education, had moved to Alabama as president. McComas was president at Mississippi State, and Bishop was president at Arkansas. I stayed there for a little while. Eventually, I became president of the Patricia Robert Harris National Network, and I had 8 regional campuses, 8 regional sites throughout the United States. We did some good things, but NSF made me an offer. I should say, while at Mississippi State, I received the Outstanding Research Award for work I'd done in patenting a compound, a chemical that could control the imported fire ant, and it was a series of compounds that would replace the forever chemicals that were being used as pesticides then. That was long before they had the name. I worked with another group of scientists at Mississippi State. One of them I thought should have gotten a Nobel Prize for science. He did some great work with developing antigens, antibodies, and things of that nature. We worked collaboratively on that. I stayed at Mississippi State for about 13 years, and then I moved to the National Science Foundation. It was kind of weird because when I was at Mississippi State, I was the program director, the PI, for something called the Alliance for Minority Participation. And that was for the state of Mississippi, and involved all the universities in Mississippi. When I moved to NSF in Washington, D.C., someone had to take my place. And I made certain that someone was someone at Jackson State. So Jackson State led the first big multi-campus initiative here. I'm going to go a little bit quicker now. At National Science Foundation, I did a couple of things that I think are noteworthy. Number one, I helped implement the Alliances for North Participation Program. That was a $200 million commitment to bring about diversity in the United States, and it worked. We had strong numerical goals, and numerical goals, we wanted to put 20,000 folks, or impact 20,000 folks to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering. We succeeded because I developed a tool for us to count, which seemed pretty simple to me. I moved from the National Science Fund. Well, I also chaired the NSF's X Engineering Program committee. And that's kind of strange because TQM, where you have incremental increases, was the way businesses would pursue things then. But NSF would say, once you incrementally improve the particular activity, eventually you got with the new technologies, you need to rethink about how you're doing the whole thing. And they asked me to chair that committee, and I did that. Very briefly, I was the Assistant Commissioner, Chief Academic Officer for all 8 public institutions in Mississippi for a few years. And I was also the Senior Vice Chancellor for all 24 higher education institutions in Oklahoma for a few years. And I could talk all evening on those 2 activities, but I think I'll stop. I moved to the East Center where I met you, and we've been having fun ever since.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Now, folks, you see, we have 2 heavy hitters here today. And since the topic that we will address is not very popular, and we've done some research, and we have found that the education system in America is not the top system in the world, economically, educationally, and politically. We're not number 1 anymore. According to some, we used to be number 1 in those 3 categories. Since we know that something will change in America in the next 10 to 13 years, because we most certainly will have some major interaction with Russia, China, the Middle East, and the United States, going to be right in that fit. They're going to fit right in, and it's mostly going to be aggression. And this is why we're going to have a new actor, a new nation in the world that is highly organized and qualified to bring peace worldwide in a short time. Now, I always say, before you have problems, you need to look at some methods, some ways to have a resolution when things happen, because we know right now, as I speak, we have World War III, Part 1 and 2, with 32 different nations in the world fighting each other, directly and indirectly, as we speak today. I'm not talking about 5 years in the past. And these aggressions going to become more comprehensive, and it's going to cause relocations, going to cause a lot of detention, and there's going to be some serious problems in America, in Asia, even Africa. The Russians, the Chinese, and others are going to be confused. And one day, and I don't want to say it, but I was told you better just mention it, some of these dictators going to accidentally push that little bag where that nuclear weapon is and going to use it somewhere in the world, because every time there's a major weapon, destructive weapon in the coffers of some nation, someone is going to use it, and it has happened every time. I'm not here to scare you, but I'm telling you there is a solution. So, Dr. Okajie, since we know that there is a need and a time for change and prepare for the future so people can survive and have unity and integrated cooperatives where they can survive and raise their families, I want you to give us just short summary of why you think, along with what I said, and use your perspectives, that this is the right time to establish a unified global African framework. A unified global African framework.
Okay. Let me look at it from, history. Somebody once said, if you don't know where you're coming from, how do you know where you're going? And if you don't know where you're going, how do you know when you get there? So within the African context, you recall that the history of Pan-Africanism and the collaborative effort of our forefathers, people like Kwame Nkrumah, people like Awolowo, they started the Organization of African Unity, and the idea was to bring the intellectual capital, the industrial capital, and the basic tenet that makes people come together to be a one nation. Africa has unlimited resources, whether in terms of education, in terms of minerals, in terms of people who are humane, who can work together, is there. The challenge at this point is, how do you integrate all of these pieces together to have a unity of purpose? There are geopolitical forces that always intervene when these type of discussions are happening. But Africa is waking up. We're beginning to get away from dependence to independent and creating collaboration that is based upon mutual respect and not based upon Africa being a consumption nation.
That's something to think about, ladies and gentlemen. As you heard, the specialist said Africa used to be a nation of countries that didn't have no respect. No respect in America. No respect in Europe. No respect in China. No respect in the Middle East. No respect with the Russians. All of those people got together and carved Africa into small nations, small states, caused a lot of genocide, had slavery in those countries. Even today, the African kings and many other rulers are just waiting to get their orders from Europe, from China, from Russia, from America. And they don't know what to do because they have a system of what I call non-integrated cohorts that are being forced to do things from outsiders and keep coups in Africa every 2 or 3 years where the citizens are suffering by the thousand. And who wants those immigrants from Africa? No one. Any black immigrant anywhere is not welcome anywhere, not even in his country. They're fighting. Even if they get on a boat or a ship and head to Europe, to America, anywhere, they are forced in most cases to go back home. You have seen it happen, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why we're going to have to look at this matter and let Dr. McHenry tell us how you can integrate education, political coordination, and economic power from his perspective, and then transfer these concepts and ideas to a nation where they have over 2,000 languages. And how do you going to integrate all of these things using the latest technology, ladies and gentlemen, where everybody in Africa will be on the same page through artificial intelligence, technology, and language artificial consorts that would teach people the same thing in the language of their choice on a regional level, and it can be expansive where everyone in the nation will be able to understand each other. Dr. McHenry, how could you address this?
Well, I agree with Felix that if you don't understand history, if you don't learn history, you might repeat part of the problems that caused that history to exist in the first place. A few years ago, I went to South Africa and met with a group of individuals who were over science and technology laboratories in the region. They had, yes, okay. I met with, we had seminars there. Jackson State led with a number of people from Jackson State going over. And it was interesting that those folks were hungry for knowledge and science that we had, that we sometimes take for granted. They were ready to absorb what we could give, but we were also ready to absorb what they could give us. It's always got to be a two-way street. All the nations, all the individual different groups, we've got to learn how to work together if we're going to make a change. And that's not easy to do. It never has been easy. And people are always fearful that if you're coming to help me, when you leave, will I be worse off after you help me than I was when you first came over? And that's been the case. A lot of times people just wanted to come by and raid the African nations and some of the groups in the United States of their minerals, their resources, and leave them. Now, when you say the countries are back into Africa, Felix can correct me on this, but my understanding the Cold War was supported in large part by Russia and the United States putting resources into different groups in Africa, in some ways inspiring them to be at odds with each other. Now, there are some natural tendencies for folks to compete for limited resources, but it was my understanding the United States and Russia supplied many nations with bullets and guns and things in Africa. And you're talking about Russia and the United States. What my friends tell me is that they're not really that strong in Africa anymore. China is in Africa. China is building bridges, buildings, helping man resources. That the Chinese are over there, maybe they're offering too much for asking too little, but that's what they are now. And we all know that the resources in Africa are vital. We know that in China, they control 80 or 90% of the rare earth metals. If we don't have rare earth metals, then you can cut that monitor off. It's not going to work. And you have so many other things that won't work without those precious few resources that a few countries or continents like Asia and Africa have. So you ask me, how do we get people to work together? We have to learn how to do things. If we're going to help them, we got to first make certain that we understand how to help each other achieve what we can achieve here.
Yeah, can I add something to that?
Okay.
You're absolutely right. If you look at the geopolitical space right now, like in Africa, we have a new leadership. Somewhere like Kari, the new Sahel region, those three countries, they're demonstrating that Africa can do things and be successful at doing it. But even more importantly, the leadership are beginning to realize that for us to be able to do all of the things we need for our citizenry, we also need to collaborate. We need to form partnerships. But the difference with the new leadership is that we are changing the paradigm. It's not just having to form partnerships where other nations will come and dictate to African leaders what they should do, how they should do it, and what they need to get out of it. They are insisting that if they come to the table, Africa by nature, in terms of the way Africans are culturally, they are very welcoming people. But they don't want you, like in the past, to bring the Bible on one hand and bring the gun on the other. You need to come with an open mind. You need to come with respect. You need to come with the understanding that the collaboration you want to have with her is going to be based upon mutual respect and mutual benefit. even in the educational space. It used to be, I teach global education for PhD students. It used to be that we talk about brain drain. What is the concept of brain drain? It really was when people come, and take all of the information. No information is limited to any one person. No person has a single pattern to any information. The key is not brain drain, but brain gain. Every country that has successfully developed, whether it's US, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, they've done it because they took advantage of the intellectual property and intellectual capital of people from all over the world.
Can I add on to yours? India had a lot of talented people. They were very, very aggressive at pursuing different activities and knowledge and gaining and pulling their people together, really, all those areas. But to be honest, as graduate dean, I noticed that Indians, many would transfer over to the United States for education, was good, great. But a number of them did not go. And India suffered brain drain because they'd be even further along now than they were. China observed what India was doing. And China said, that's great. We're seeing you sending your folks over to America. We want to send our folks over to America. But they sent them over on a J6 visa, not on the other visa where they can come back. In other words, when you get the J6 visa, you're coming back home. You're not going to stay in America. And that was great for them. As a matter of fact, I believe Felix I think Jackson State have a branch somewhere in China.
Yeah. When I was VP for research, we had about 7 collaborations with major universities in China. Mm-hmm. And that concept was, it's okay. I don't believe in the concept of one continent or a group of people controlling the intellectual capital of the world. Yeah. Because whatever is coming out of the US, for instance, has a filtration effect to other parts of the world. If you look at, the US today, a lot of the business and a lot of the people that are contributing significantly to the economy are people who came here to school. They stayed, they formed businesses, they are successful. That does not mean, that they have to be in Africa or in other parts of the world to transfer that knowledge.
Okay, folks, we're coming up soon with a minute break, but I just want to give a summary of what you just heard. You heard the specialists say that Africa has the potential to do the things we are talking about today because they are being transformed into one unit gradually. Because I found through research that some of the African nations now are implementing what we call the African Union Passport for all citizens, for all students, all researchers, and entrepreneurs, and allow them free flow through the various nations. They are working on this right now. And they're also establishing something called the Continental Standards for University Credits and Vocational Certification, where they can allow students to move between the regions without losing their progress. That's something they don't even do in America. This is being worked on in Africa today. And when we come back, we're going to talk about one currency, one economic system, one nuclear program, one people. Folks, let's go on this break.
Plan today, protect tomorrow. Life is full of uncertainties, but your family's future doesn't have to be. Having life insurance, a will, and a trust in place is one of the most powerful acts of love and responsibility you can give to your loved ones. Life insurance provides financial security for your family when they need it most. Will ensures your wishes are honored and your assets go where you intend. Trust offers added protection and peace of mind by safeguarding your legacy. Don't wait until it's too late. Start preparing today so your family is protected tomorrow. Need guidance? Contact Dr. Eldridge Henderson at 601-20-119-57 To learn more about how to get started, Dr. Henderson is available for speaking engagements. Like and follow us on Facebook and YouTube. Now back to our...
When was the last time you reviewed your church's bylaws? Are they current with today's laws and regulations, or are they putting your ministry at risk? At PCAP Media, we help churches review, update, and strengthen their bylaws to stay compliant and protected. Don't wait for a problem to arise. Be proactive and prepared. For more information, call PCAP Media today at 601-201-1957. We are also available to help you with your 501c3 application. PCAP Media, supporting today's church with tomorrow in mind.
Okay, folks, we're back. I'm telling you, this is the Eld Henderson Real News Show. Organize, don't criticize. We're talking about 30 to 40 years in the future right now. Now, you know, when you start talking about the future, a lot of you all get scared. You wonder if someone is talking about what's going to happen in 30 to 40 years, what's going to happen to me now? I've been telling you for years, folks. Some of you all are unhappy with your present situation in America, in Mississippi, in the South, all over the country. But I can assure you that before some of you get positive results in the future, your current situation is going to get worse. Because you're not looking at the new things that's going on in automation and technology. You're waiting for the government to give you something. You're not preparing yourself without what we call big old college degree, which you don't need. You need specialization skills, folks. You need certification in various trades and technology, in science, engineering, nursing. You don't need a 4-year degree. You need a 2-year RN degree, a 4-tiered certification in computer technology, where you can make, starting off, $40,000 a year. Get the next tier certification, $65,000. The next tier, number 3, $90,000. Tier 6, $200,000 without a BS degree. Now, folks, this is the future. And I want the experts right here, that talk about the political system in Africa that they can see, and we want to get a framework. We're going to start with Dr. Okajie again, Dr. Felix. We call him Dr. Felix. And, sir, I want you to talk about what is the United African Economic and Political Council. Do you know anything about that? In some books, they call it something else. But what are the nations in Africa doing, as you know from research and what you know talking to your friends, that where they want to have a political concentration of power on the national basis and get those 55 different nations in Africa, on the continent, to work as one? Have you ever heard of the All-African Army? Instead of Europeans and others as peacekeepers coming into one country, disturbing the peace, killing the people, moving out, causing all kinds of diseases to happen as they did in America when the Europeans came over here in the 1600s. What do you know about that political cohesion?
Let me put it this way. It's a doable proposition, but it's going to take time to get to that point. And time is not the enemy, because if you look at, the US today, if you look at the developed economies, they didn't get to where they are in one day. You remember this, all of the wars that each of these countries have fought, to have that unity of purpose. I think that's what's going on, in Africa. It started with Organization of African Unity. There is ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States. There is recently, the Sahel region, collaborative, that is really going to be one of the models, for all of African countries to see the benefit of collaborative work politically, economically, and with the idea, the bottom line is it's not so much the ideological underpinnings of what you call democratic state or not democratic. What is going to make a difference is to have a system that is grounded within the culture and the way of life of Africans, and make sure that the first consideration is looking at for the interest of the people who don't have the resources.
Okay, now you said something that most people don't believe. You mentioned a word called democracy. You know, and I know, and Dr. McHenry know that there's been no democracy practiced anywhere in the world since the birth of Jesus. Now, a lot of people been brainwashed to believe that we have democracy here and there in this country, other countries, in Europe and other places. But if you don't believe me, ladies and gentlemen, just get to your dictionary or go to the computer and look at what the word democracy means and see if you can think of one place in the world it's being practiced today. But in Africa right now, they have something called regional centers of excellence. So instead of every country trying to teach everything to everybody, they have what we call specialized knowledge hubs, ladies and gentlemen, in Africa right now. They're proposing this. In West Africa, for instance, they have a hub called FinTech and Creative Industries. In Southern Africa, they have hubs where you teach young people and others green energy and mineral processing. In East Africa, they have something called the agrotech and the logistics systems in schools. And in North Africa, they have aerospace and manufacturing schools in these specialized hubs, and they are going to put a system together where the students can use their visas and abolish the visa system. So if you have a visa, a passport for all the students to move interchangeably throughout the country. Folks, this is something different. They're working on this in Africa today. And when you find this dual education system model being put in office, those students and researchers and specialists then that's in West Africa can move back to their countries in what I call Southern Africa or East Africa and use the same technology and the systems that they've been taught in what we call One Africa. Folks, this dual system is something that they don't even have in America right now. If you get your education in Mississippi or New York City or California, you may or may not be able to find a job there. You have to go elsewhere. But the problem is the pay is different, sometimes up to 50%. But these African nations are going to have a base pay where you can live according to your needs without living in poverty when you get the education and the specialization you need. So, gentlemen, and I'm going to go to Dr. McHenry this time, I want you to talk about, and this is a very serious topic, and if it's too strong for you because of your religious belief, you just pass it on to Dr. Felix.
Yeah.
Pass it on to him. Now, do you think Africa would have more respect if they would have one African military that was trained at these different education hubs that I mentioned and have those officers and others specialized in these various areas and put them in uniforms and say, Europeans and others, get out of this country when we have a conflict in our nation? 55 different African nations, we're going to solve it ourselves because our people are trained. They know the language, they know the culture, they know the mores and folkways, and we are not going to have a lot of death anymore in Africa. We're going to have peace. You give me your version of it and then
Well,
Dr. Felix.
you had a number of questions tied up in that.
That's what I do. Integrate it and talk about it as a unit.
I'm going to do that, but I'm going to start by stating that every summer we have about 50 Mandela Fellows come over from Africa, from many different countries. They come together. They want to hear from us, they say, but really, Felix, they want to talk to each other. And it's a great bonding thing when they come over. They're able to communicate and develop closer relationships. They're away from home. And we have some really good activities that we have. And then they show us some of the things that they have. And they network and partner among themselves. And also they partner with us. If you ask me if any nation, any continent would be better if they could handle their own challenges by themselves or within the confines of their own territory, of course, that would be true. But I don't know of anybody that can do that right now. I don't think the United States with Canada and Mexico, we're arguing with everybody in the world right now. I don't think we could do it. Europe certainly isn't doing it, although the European Union is coming about stronger than people would think, but they still have people who are breaking away from them. So I think it's a good goal. It's ideal that if we could do that, but that's going to be a tough one. I think we have to make certain that if we are to be part of the solution, we need to start thinking about goals and incremental goals so that we're moving in the right direction. Because those things, I don't think they may, and I could be wrong, but I think it's going to take a few lifetimes to pull some of that together. Now, the Army and the war and the nuclear weapons and things of that nature, that's a tougher question. Because what you're asking is, if we had one army in Africa that would control and police all that goes on in Africa, that would be an interesting activity. But I feel that you need some diversity. You need some ways in which some people can think one way and the other different ways in order to make things come out. I mean, we're where we are now because we have a diversity of thought.
Doctor, don't we have one American army, one Russian army, one Chinese army? Aren't they getting along? Aren't they ruling
Africa
things?
is a continent.
That's right.
It's not a
I know it's
particular nation.
55
All that
different
you mentioned
nations.
were nations.
55 different nations.
Different
and those
nations.
55 different nations can be considered one Africa if they will start thinking about themselves as a unified African nation, an international unit of one.
But you do see my point.
I see your
You're
point.
talking about one nation. Africa is a continent with 50 nations.
That's exactly right.
It's hard to get 50 states to work together here.
It's supposed to be hard, but that's why it can be done.
Well, I don't say it can't be done now. You missed my point. I said it's going to take time.
Of course it takes time.
A lot of time to get those things in place so that we can benefit from those. What do you think?
Go ahead, Doctor.
Yeah. The way I would, look at it is by asking the question. If the countries in the current world order are able to work together individually and collectively and see the end product that is good for the universal meaning they are people first and foremost, and having the power to be the elite of the world. If they can do that, then that's a teachable moment for Africa, particularly an Africa that has everything that these superpowers have, other than, having, the weapons of mass destruction.
Right.
But the materials that those weapons are made of, guess where they come from?
From Africa.
They come from Africa. So if you don't learn from your mistakes, you continue to make the same mistakes or continue to do the same thing you're doing and expect a different result. It's not going to happen. So the African thought process should be, how do we work together collectively as a team, because the sum of the part will be better than the whole. That's the first thing. And then the leadership in Africa has to buy into that concept, as opposed to everybody wanting to be a president. If that can be sorted out, within the African leadership, within the diaspora, and see the 21st century as an opportunity to integrate and work together as one. Working together as one does not necessarily mean that you cannot work independently of each other. But when it comes to the major issues that puts you on the same level as the developed economies, then it is possible, to begin to look at things a little bit differently. Because if you don't, you continue to be the same that you've been, forever and forever.
You're right. And this isn't meant to contradict anything that you said, because I agree with it. But I just remember the statement, and I won't give the guy a quote, but he said, our countries are like the fingers on our hand. We're going to do our thing, but if you attack us, then we come together and we defend it. That I agree with. I think that could be the type of government that would help move the nation and the world together. Africa could lead the world as opposed, because the world needs Africa. I mean, chrome, look at the rare earth elements, gold, silver, diamonds, all that's coming, much of it is coming from Africa.
The world needs each other. You see, that's everybody needs everybody. If you look at it from a macro level, your immediate family, you can't do it by yourself. You have to lean upon each other.
Right.
There are times where you take leadership. There are other times where you don't. But when it comes to the geopolitical aspect of Africa, taking leadership role in the world and sitting in the same chair with other countries is not going to happen when we carve small domains, within each other. When all of us can get together to think of the bigger picture. Talk about economics, talk about development, talk about, security issues. We are stronger if, from a security point of view, there's a collective effort to have a system whereby you mess with one person, you're messing with the rest. It's happened in other places, and they're successful at using that as a collective advantage.
And that's been true from the time of Jesus, but really from the time of Moses, that's the way it works. When I worked with building alliances, they were stronger because they were together. When individual universities couldn't do much, but when they came together, they could defend each other and they could make it work. And so the same is true with Africa. And I agree with you to the extent that they would come together to help bring about the change that's necessary.
Now, gentlemen, you all have the solution and don't even know it. And all you all are saying is that in the near future, 7 to 10 years, all the African nations have to do, the 55 different nations on the continent, finally come up with a way to scale their internal markets to compete with the European Union, Russia, China, and the United States. And there are 3 things they can do to make this happen in 7 to 10 years. See, a lot of you all want to wait until Jesus comes again. He's not coming back anytime soon. So the Africans or any nation in the world where they have a lot of division can do 3 things, and they'll be competing with the European Union, China, Russia, and the United States in 7 to 10 years. And one thing they can have is a unified tax corporate law that says a single African country, nation, region, or individual can register their business in any African nation, state, or business and automatically be able to operate anywhere in Africa with the same tax ID and the same regulation. That's number 1. Number 2, you need to incorporate what we call the Brain Gain Initiative, where you offer aggressive tax incentives for the African diaspora, that all them jokers that's living outside of Africa, that can return and bring their monies and start new businesses and create new universities and industries in Africa. Our good friend, Dr. Felix, he probably has millions of dollars through his association with himself and other friends where they can leave America or continue to work here and stay here build new universities, new businesses in Africa, and compete with the European Union, China, Russia, and the United States. And the other thing they can do that is most significant, much better than they can in Europe, China, Russia, and the United States, they can have compulsory bilingualism. They have exactly 1,500 to 2,000 different languages in Africa. And if they start teaching what we call internationalism or nationalism versus localism, and every child learn their own mother tongue plus 3 other languages that the African leaders decide we're going to have them, and then that can ensure that the next generation of workers will be able to collaborate with each other without translators. I know some Africans right now that can speak 7 languages plus dialects, and they're walking right around here at Jackson State University. Speak to that, Dr. Felix, if you would like to.
Yeah, you know what you just articulated, you know, is already in the hopper in some of the African states as we speak, but it's not being universally acknowledged. You see, you have to understand that, like Dr. McHenry was saying, you know, the languages in Africa, as many as they are, is a value-added proposition to African collaboration. Because, you know, the very first weapon one can use to accomplish anything is language. The question is, how do you harness the languages that you have to give you a better return on internal and external investment? Now think about that. The major languages in Africa, other than the dialects, you know, it's English, it's French, and then a little bit of, you know, the other, you know, major language. But English is, you know, primarily, and French, you know, because of the colonization effort. We can use that to accomplish everything we want to do, plus some.
Plus their
Plus more. Yeah, you
That's
have
exactly
mother
right.
to you have Swahili. So if I were a computer scientist, for instance, and I wanted to develop something that is unique, you know, I can use my own language to write up all of my, you know, languages, and I can sell it to any part of the world.
That's right.
In this day and time, it's not and languages can be translated in a second, right? And I can use it to build my security system in such a way that only people within that domain can understand what is in there.
Okay.
That's why I'm talking about using it, you know, to your competitive advantage.
And that's why these little things you can walk around with. I don't have it on. I thought I had it on, but they can translate it real time while you're talking
in any language.
So the issue is the substance, and how in English in Africa. I mean, I think it was 30 or 40 countries were represented. They all spoke English.
Yeah.
So there was no barrier. Language was not a barrier.
It's not a bad, actually, you know, it's a value-added proposition, because only Africa of any country in the world has as many dialects as you can count of. Name any country in the world.
That's right.
You know, even within my own village, when I go 5 kilometers from my village, it's a different language in the other village. But we still communicate.
That's what I'm talking about. You know, you can understand what they are saying.
It's the value.
That's
if
right.
we all believe in something and we all work towards accomplishing it regardless of the language, we'll get there.
And in America here, if you have one language and make an effort to learn 2 or 3, people criticize you, and you've already been miseducated. Very few people in America, especially the so-called minorities, been taught real English. They've been taught all kind of ebonics and messed up Spanish and all kinds of things, and we can't communicate. But if you find a student like my assistant here that can speak 3 or 4 different languages, people look at that person as an oddity. What's wrong with him or her? And Dr. McHenry's children, and possibly yours, that have all this excessive education, I bet they can speak several different languages.
The more you can speak, the better off you are.
Exactly.
In terms of being a global citizen.
You got 15 seconds each to give us a go away statement. Starting with you, Dr. McHenry. 15 seconds.
This has been a great experience. I think you're going to do well with this particular initiative. And I think the goal of One Africa is great. No one would argue with that. I think the idea that the African nation, the African people can compete with anyone in the world, that's just automatically known. I'll end with saying that, I'll end.
Go ahead, Dr. Haley.
What in this century and going beyond, what Africa needs is mutual respect and mutual collaboration. No one nation has it all. Other nations coming to do business in Africa must come with an understanding that Africa has something to offer. And that understanding is going to lead to progress by both parties.
Thank you, folks. You've heard it. You're not going to hear it anywhere else. One Africa, one nation, one military, one nuclear system, one education system, one economic development system, one people. Folks, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And all of this can be done. You've heard the experts. Some people don't believe it. I believe it because I know that if you want to do something, you have to start working yesterday. We're going to go back and say goodbye to you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next week. And I want to thank you all for listening. Pass the word now. Pass this word and this program all over the world again. Send it to your friends. Thank you for listening.